Welcome to the Sprocket Pod, your podcast for helpful HubSpot content. I'm Cameron Collins, and alongside my co-host Mark Lerner, we sit down each week with experts on the HubSpot CRM to break down cool builds and unique apps that will make your instance better. Whether you're a new admin or you're a business owner looking to get the most out of HubSpot, our conversations are going to provide you with unique insights that you can apply. Don't forget, we host the Sprocket Pod live on LinkedIn every week, and you can catch all of our episodes on YouTube and Spotify. Let's dive into today's episode and get you working smarter with HubSpot.
Hello and welcome to the Sprocket Pod. Thank you for tuning in. I am really excited for our guest today. Phil is the CMO with Tyke, and we're super excited to be breaking down the difference between RevOps and GTM Ops. Phil, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, Cameron. Indeed, I work for Tyke, API management platform based in Belgium. We work globally. Been in B2B marketing for 30 years, and actually last week I presented on that very topic for the RevOps Alliance in London, and I'm gonna cover that again this week because it's a hot topic.
Yeah, it really is. I've been speaking with a lot of people in the community about go-to-market ops. Of course, if anyone has ever listened to this show, they'll know that I am a huge advocate for those who are HubSpot admin to become proficient when it comes to the strategic side of growing a business. So that way you don't just become too technical in working in a CRM. And go-to-market ops is really I don't know if it's even a newer term or maybe it's just a burgeoning one, but I'm really curious to get your take on how this is now growing as a role and as a field.
Yeah, totally. And to be honest, I think it's a term that's really emerged in the last 12 months, unless I'm mistaken. A term is a term, right? We love in marketing and related, we love to use fancy words in a way, which usually is representing roughly the same area, but I'm going to show a bit later a couple of examples of how RevOps and GTM Ops are actually embedded. But there are two versions, just to make it more confusing in a way. There are two versions and two kind of schools, if you want, where RevOps is part of GTM Ops or GTM Ops is part of RevOps. But basically, if you're looking at go-to-market, obviously you have different go-to-market options. You have PLG, product-led growth, SLG, sales-led growth. You have hybrid, self-serve, and a couple others, obviously partners, for example. And obviously, when you look at go-to-market, you have new sales, you have expansion, contraction, churn, you have retention. So you have different types of go-to-market. But at the end of the day, it is ops, it is operations. And what we're going to talk about today also is AI. AI is increasing, is accelerating the changes that are happening in both RevOps and GTM Ops.
So go-to-market ops is a specialization within RevOps, if you will. It's not necessarily something that you do independent of RevOps in the same way that sales ops is a function of revenue operations. Go-to-market ops is the same thing. It's a function of what RevOps does.
Yeah, so there are, if you simply search Google or on any AI tool definitions, you just type GTM Ops and RevOps, you see a few websites and video, for example, from the revenue architects, where when I started looking at that topic and analyze it a bit more, and from my own experience of organizations where there's no RevOps or GTM Ops, actually, sometimes you have a chief growth officer, you have a CRO, chief revenue officer, and maybe I need to specify that in the US, it's a different situation. I don't know where the audience here is coming from, but in Europe, some European regions in the US, you have different levels of maturity. I would say the US is usually more mature. Everything which is SaaS, go-to-market, etc. UK also, but some other countries, APAC, I know less. So you have different levels of maturity, different sizes of companies. Obviously, the maturity of the companies, whether it's Series A, B, an enterprise, a mid-size, you might have in place RevOps or not. So I'm looking now at the definition of go-to-market and RevOps. And another definition is RevOps and business ops, where business ops is basically the financial side, the more, I would say, back office, if you want, kind of definitions, while RevOps, technically speaking, for me, the definition I use, RevOps is basically the coverage of marketing, sales, customer success, and product sometimes. So the commercial and the product side. So these four bubbles, if you want, being more aligned, more integrated. For me, that's the fundamental definition and goal of RevOps. Now, what I noticed last week from attending RevOps community conference is very much in many fields, in many sectors, RevOps is being very sales efficiency and optimization. Not to say that RevOps is not looking at marketing or customer success, but I think there is a trend that RevOps is very much focused on sales. And I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just what I notice in many companies, and maybe it's different in the US again, in some areas. GTM Ops, if you look, for example, at GTM Partners, which has one of the best definitions, you just look at that wheel, and I'm not sure if we can show it as a way. Yeah, thank you. Just noticed you just shared it. So that was what I was talking about in terms of the first version, where RevOps is the bigger circle, where you actually have business ops there. And RevOps has very strong data focus, data integration, tools integration. And there you have actually finance, while go-to-market is a subset. What I looked at here is, I must say I'm quite black and white, from left to right, from RevOps to a more GTM ops level. And then we'll look at the other definition. But for this one, where go-to-market ops is basically covering marketing, sales, and customer success, and RevOps is more of a back office role. In that case, if RevOps is more of a back office role as opposed to looking more at the market, so the first point I have here is, yes, RevOps is there to break down the silos, for sure, between these different 3 or 4 different teams. But a more holistic market, external, customer-centric approach is usually what GTM and GTM Ops is about. So you might include other teams, other leadership, and even customers into the whole picture. Usually, as I mentioned, RevOps is more of an internal, sales-focused kind of efficiency, internal efficiency reporting, also data reporting, dashboard, while go-to-market ops in the next version that I'll show you from GTM Partners is more customer-centric, is really taking the market as a center, as a basis, and everything around will be a wheel, basically. Like, in a way, the HubSpot flywheel, in a way, is also very related to that. Reactive, and again, I'm being black and white here. So team needs, for example, in some companies I worked, RevOps is asking marketing, me, CMO, sales, chief sales, etc. What do you need from RevOps? What do you want us to do? So it could be a program, it could be reporting, but it's very reactive. While if you look at GTM, a pure, wider kind of GTM way of working, you're looking at how can we be proactive to help commercial, product, etc. basically define the roadmap for them, taking again that market, that customer aspect, and make it very agile, working in sprints, working in whatever way you project manage your operations. Usually it's board sponsored at board level, or CEO, COO is actually proactively sponsoring, not just saying, okay, once a year, good job, guys, but actually making it happen every week. So we're looking also, yeah.
No, go ahead. I have a question to follow up on all of this.
Yeah.
Finish your thought.
No, sure. I'll just finish my bullet points. So the analysis, the look back, if you want to look back, okay, let's look at the last quarter, the last month, the last year. What have we learned? What are the conclusions? Product marketing, customer service. What can we bring to the rest of the company? Or looking at the now. While now we're looking, especially with AI, we can talk more about what I mean by AI in GTM Ops. You're looking at predicting, you're looking at scaling, you're looking at forward signals, buying intent, using dynamic lead scoring, using clever tools that will allow you to get all these market signals into a new kind of reporting, which is looking not only at the past, but also looking at the future. that you're looking also at going from a pure growth and effectiveness, making sure that the right things are done, to more of a cost efficiency, an ROI, actually, where, of course, in RevOps, you have revenue and revenue growth. Yes, that's the fundamental pillar. But also now we're looking more and more in terms of the boards and the GTM efficiency, which is another term which is used more and more. Cost of acquisition, payback, all these different KPIs. Sometimes RevOps is looking into that, but GTM Ops is very much more towards efficiency and ROI across the board, across the company. So you're looking also at real time as opposed to looking at snapshots or previous trends. There you go.
We've got a lot to unpack here. So
Yes.
I want to ask, because those who are familiar with the show and revenue architects and winning by design and the bow tie model, oftentimes I've spoken very passionately about how it's important for those who are HubSpot admin to be strategic, specifically by understanding RevOps as a function of the whole business. And it's really interesting on the chart where you have the wheel, how go-to-market ops, I think, covers what we would traditionally think of as the bow tie model part of how a business functions. So you have your marketing, your sales, your success, and that drives expansion and such. But true RevOps encompasses a lot of the things that aren't necessarily driving the business itself. They're not driving net new revenue, but they support the business tangentially. So finance, data, customer support.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting to see broken down here.
It is. And when I did my own the previous presentation, so if you want what you see here, I think what you meant is GTM Ops in this version is very much like the flywheel. Right? It's attract, engage, convert, marketing, sales, and customer success, and then obviously come back and expand. So, and I'm not saying I agree with that definition. I would definitely, I would say, agree more with the GTM partners definition of how things should be run, which I think is more of a 360 holistic view as opposed to bubbles, as we could see in the visual. It is more, I believe, more into the flywheel model, which is reducing friction and at the same time increasing speed through the different, I think there's about 8 different areas, and RevOps is one of them.
I'm interested to get your take on the notion in the flywheel, or the wheel that we have here in this graphic, where here we can see that success ops and customer support ops are broken down differently. And I know at scale, companies are going to have sizable teams where they can function very differently from a small to medium-sized business. But from your perspective, what's the difference between customer success ops versus customer support ops?
Yes, customer support, the way we define it at least, and again, enterprise and different growth stage companies will have different ways of working. And again, depending on your go-to-market motion, if you product-led or self-serve versus enterprise kind of sales-led, it would be different. But customer support, you could say, is to do with bugs and ticketing and using Zendesk and the likes in terms of ensuring that pre-onboarding or onboarding and production, if you talk about software, are basically running as smoothly as possible. While customer success, in many cases, has got more to do with account management, post-sales, could be partly a role of expanding, but usually it's about satisfaction, right? It's about making sure that satisfaction scores, NPS, etc., during the onboarding, but also after. But it's, for me, I define it as a level above customer support. Not to say that the customer support people are less senior or they are probably a bit more tactical, but they are essential. Obviously, it's very technical also, customer support. In a product like API management is super technical, so you need to go really deep into the coding sometimes. While customer success looks at way more than that. If I look at the tools, the vendors like HubSpot, we use HubSpot and other tools. customer success will not look at the details. They will look at the roadmap with you. They would look at the whole context of processes and strategy and people and technology, while customer support is probably more related to the technology part. They won't look at the people, strategy, and processes as much. That's the way I see it, at least.
I think that's a really interesting call out, because companies that have the resources to have a dedicated team on either side, I think it's important to give your people the space to focus on either the expansion and the customer experience in a proactive manner, which would fall under success ops.
Yes.
Whereas support is going to be very reactionary. Someone has a problem, they call in, you solve a ticket.
Yeah. But absolutely, I forgot that too. And I would say about CX, about customer experience, because you probably have CX ops somewhere as a term. I think customer success, customer experience is also customer support, because you could have a great sales service, pre-sales, post-sales. One of our differentiators, for example, are the people. Pre-sales engineer or sales engineers, and they are very technical people. They do POCs, demos, but they also follow up. And the people in customer support are essentials too. And sometimes they are actually going into a customer success kind of way of working, sometimes going into sales demos, because of the context of the customer who has very technical people. So again, depending on the personas, you might have, we deal with engineers, right? Software engineers, software architects, but it could be up to CIOs. So we're not going to send a customer support person to talk to a CIO, obviously. But a lot of the middle ground of your customers and prospects will probably require a mix of customer success and support in complex buying journeys, if you want. Yeah.
And one of the topics that I really am eager to cover with you today is how all of this is evolving. So, as everyone is going to be familiar, the digital landscape has transformed in immeasurable ways over the past 24 months since the launch of ChatGPT and the acceleration of AI especially. But how has RevOps and go-to-market ops
months, and myself as a CMO, I have to keep track and use actually tools like Perplexity, and Gemini has just released some amazing features also. For example, one of the AI as a powerhouse for helping delivery, helping efficiency of the content production of the marketing team. But more and more, I see, as I presented last week, I see 4 or 5 areas which have completely accelerated changes, if you want, and disrupting, in a way, RevOps. So the 5 or 6 ways that I see, and especially recently, AI agents, we talk about that and maybe the way we see it at TIE. But they are game-changing kind of areas where AI is introduced. You have personalization of the journeys, of the customer journeys, in terms of the personas, in terms of the pains or the jobs to be done, the JTBDs, if you're familiar with that. We do that obviously with HubSpot and other tools, smart content, smart modules, you name it. Messaging is just amazing. The tools now allow you to personalize to a level of one person, of one contact, one account, like ABM kind of play. The second is, as I mentioned, efficiency gains. So being able to have workflows internally, but also with customers, and using chat, using notifications, using reminders, you name it, allow an efficiency. I've seen some numbers where the improvement can be up to 50% more. Personalization, by the way, is used by, I would say, 80% of marketers, and I would say sales, sequences and SDRs, and now we're talking about AI SDR, so that's another one. Will SDRs and AEs even be replaced? You've got all these virtual SDRs coming up. I don't know. I don't have the answer. It's changing for sure. You better be ready. So you have personalization, efficiency gain. The third one is obviously growing your sales faster. So increasing velocity through having better insights, through using obviously more relevant messaging, right place, right time. Number 4 is which is a decision making. So AI shortens sales processes, and obviously you have cost, you have time of people, so that's also cost. 25, 40% by making decisions faster and simpler in a way, more informed. So instead of spending a couple of calls with the people, okay, here you go, you have recommendations, we just need 5 minutes to decide. Number 5, I would say, is sentiment analysis, which is understanding customer emotions, whether you use LinkedIn or others, analyzing massive amounts of data, qualitative, structured or unstructured, but usually structured, to basically, again, have a better, as I would say, messaging or better approach based on the person you're talking to or the group of people, because we need now buying center approach, not just a contact or account level. You've got in between, you have the team or the buying center, which is made of different personas. And finally, I would say targeting. AI has completely upgraded audience targeting. So the data sets, the analysis, the way you can analyze and craft for campaign effectiveness has changed marketing, RevOps, customer success also, and sales, obviously. So personalization, efficiency gains, sales growth, decision-making, sentiment analysis, and targeting. And now, and then maybe I'll stop here. I'll talk about AI agents, but you might have some questions first.
It's really amazing to hear all of this, especially 2 years back. I was a skeptic when ChatGPT first came out as to the level of impact it would have. It was a very novel application, but now, as you just brought up, it not only has the incredible new features like AI agents, but it's able to accelerate processes, just whether that's through data analysis, if it's challenging the notion of what you think your ICP is. There's an endless number of ways that we can use all of the different LLM models that are out there now. But what are some of the ways that you're using it on a regular basis and that your team is using it on a regular basis to actually drive change at your company?
Yeah. AI, obviously, we have content and design team using it, so everybody knows that. And we have developed our own AI because we have a strict level of compliance. We work for regulatory sectors and GovTech in some countries and fintech and all that stuff. So we're not allowed basically to use ChatGPT, and because we love AI, obviously, at Tide, because it's data, right? APIs. There's more and more data and APIs and services talking to each other, so we love it. But what many people don't realize is that the security aspects of AI is going to come from the center, and it's not there yet. All the governance and the platform, we have an API management platform. Governance is the hot topic, and AI governance is a biggie. And of course, in Europe, we have GDPR and all that stuff. But you have cybersecurity linked to it, leaks and fraud and all that stuff. So when you have millions of API calls a minute or an hour, you'd better make sure that you have tight security. So we developed a Montag, which is an AI-enabled features for gateways, for API gateways. That's one. 2, we use AI agents for now internal use. So let's say you have Confluence, Zendesk, HubSpot, and other platforms, and the data is in structured and unstructured way. So having AI agents for RevOps, for example, and AI agents for marketing, you can, instead of people coming to you, to your customer support, we all know about AI chatbot, etc. But basically, instead of asking, where can I find the latest information about my inbound strategy, or what's working in my pipeline this month? So it obviously depends on the prompts, but the AI agents will serve through your Confluence, all your internal kind of databases and services, and give you a very fast answer, as opposed to Slack somebody in the company and can you help me there? Blah, blah, blah. You can have the answer in 2 minutes. So it's like the internal version of Perplexity or Gemini, but it goes further than that, because agents are also workflows, right? They are not just prompt Q&A kind of thing, because people see AI as ChatGPT, but that's only a part of it, of course, an important part. The agents are game changers for RevOps and GTM Ops, because you have automated workflows that are intelligent automated workflows that are dynamic, that are using LLM and other techniques. So We actually, this week, we had a brainstorm about that for RevOps and the marketing team, and we came up with quite a lot of other ways, use cases to use AI agents. So we have our head of engineer, who's actually a very clever guy, obviously, who's been developing that with our MarOps team, and it's in development. So that is, I shouldn't say too much for competitors, but that is definitely a game changer for efficiency.
Do you have any tips for maybe some of the RevOps and GTM professionals who haven't fully embraced AI and how they can get started in making the most of it?
Yeah, yes. And we're all learning, right? It's impossible to keep track of everything. So as always, I would say that the recommendations I have after being 30 years in consulting and marketing is start small. Look at a specific use case in your company, whether it's external with your customers or sales, or whether it's just internal, which you can test, try, and sell to your stakeholders. If depending if you have sponsorship or not, that's a different scenario. So you can have a roadmap and a beautiful strategy, but start small, pilot in one area or one use case or one problem you have, and then scale gradually. If we talk about AI agents, I'm sure when you have an AI agent that covers a specific area of your business, you can duplicate or replicate it, or you can scale it and go horizontally in terms of case studies. Secondly, is to, and then data is everything, right? If you have not enough data or unstructured data, you can use AI as much as you want. It's like in, crap out in a way, right? So data quality and accessibility and data hygiene critical, whether you use AI or not. So I would even look at that first before you do a pilot, obviously. Third tip I would have is a cross-functional team, like a SWAT team, not specifically one department. So you could have one person from RevOps, one from marketing, one from sales, one from finance, depending on the use case, to basically work on that. Or maybe you have 2 or 3 pilots that you planned throughout 1 quarter, 2 quarters. And that team might have very senior people, but a mix of people who also junior, who can execute. Keep it short, keep it small, keep it like 5 or 6 people to demonstrate to your board or to your leadership team the current examples and even KPIs, if you can, in terms of time savings, in terms of increased satisfaction, etc. And then obviously you start selling more and more to your stakeholders. So these would be, and the last one maybe I'll mention is, of course, measuring, right? You can't manage what you don't measure. So agreeing a set of 3, 2, 3, maybe more, 4, 5 KPIs, usually to do with cost efficiency or time efficiency or increased speed to market, it is obviously important. Otherwise, you're just playing with a new toy, right? But there's no direct link, just like in marketing. You need a direct link to your go-to-market KPIs. Anybody who's not linked to go-to-market KPIs or go-to-market ops, if you want, has less impact on the company, and it would be more of a cost center as opposed to a profit center.
I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on how AI plays into the greater theme of the trends in RevOps. So there's many changes that are coming to how RevOps and go-to-market ops evolve. Where do you see go-to-market ops and RevOps going as we continue to navigate this landscape?
I would say, as always, it depends on people. When I started that a long time ago in the 90s at Anderson Consulting, it was the 4 pillars: strategy, people, processes, and technology. In 30 years, it's just amazing what I've seen change. I would say the last 5 years, what's changed. So the strategy, of course, you need the strategy. That's the easy bit in a way. Processes, that's already a bit harder. That's where the processes, RevOps and go-to-market ops have a key role to play, obviously. And now you have automated workflows through AI agents, which is more the technology. The technology is there. You've got tools all around the world, free or cheap. So I'm not worried about tools. And actually, it's reducing the tech stack, which is important now, and really not trying to complicate things. But the last bit, the last pillar, the people. So it will depend definitely on your leadership. It depends on specific people. We have a MarOps person who is dynamite, And if we didn't have that person, we would be 1 year too late. But having a couple of people in your company who are not just evangelists, but they are actually doing it, they're actually experimenting, piloting, is critical. Whether they are in RevOps or GTM Ops, doesn't matter really. You need these kind of people coupled with a C-level sponsor who will be able to support them and to make sure that they have the resources, and also that the board is gonna hear and see the potential to basically ensure that and GTM Ops are working in sync, or actually are one team. And that one team I mentioned, that SWAT team, great, working in an agile way. The term RevOps of GTM Ops, to be honest, doesn't matter. But if you look at the GTM Partners wheel, where you have leadership and management, you have the market aspect, you have the marketing, the brand and demand, you have the pipeline, velocity, and conversion, sales. Then you have customer success, customer time to value, and expansion, and then RevOps. So RevOps has a role to play. If you look at the wheel, as being a car, there are different elements in a car. RevOps might not be the pilot of the whole GTM machine, if you want, but it is pretty much an engine in the car, I would say. Revenue operations is, if you look at GTM Ops as automobile, I would say my analogy would be RevOps is probably indeed the engine. Then you have other elements which are essentials, like the wheels, the fuel. I'm not sure if I answered your question there.
No, you definitely did. I'm curious to hear your take on who RevOps reports to in an organization.
To the sponsor who's going to be able to be a change maker. Usually, you have the typical ones, CRO, CEO, some cases maybe CEO. I would say, in theory, for me, the CRO should be the person. And as we know, the CRO usually is more on the sales side. It used to be a CCO or Chief Sales Officer. I don't think it's that common to have a Chief Marketing Officer running RevOps or CRO. So I would say it makes sense usually to be CRO or COO. But I would tend to say a direct line to the board, the commercial board, would make sense. It doesn't have to be, see, if you have a strong RevOps person, or it doesn't have to be a C-level. It could be a VP, it could be director. What's important is there is a strong stakeholder management in place, and at least one sponsor to make sure that there's always a slot, if you want, to cover the proactive side of GTM Ops. And again, whether the person has a job title RevOps or GTM or whatever, it doesn't matter. We, the people, and the energy of the people, I would say.
And I don't think arbitrary is the right word to say that it's arbitrary for the person who holds the responsibility of the revenue. But in some organizations, the reason I'm almost wanting to use that word is because in smaller companies, for example, you might not have a CRO or a large executive team. And so I think for smaller businesses, that might be the owner, founder, it might be the CEO. But those are going to be the stakeholders that hold the largest responsibility for the revenue, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Unless you have a CEO who's more on the product side and then the CEO is more on the commercial side, which can happen. But I would say it would be better than having a sales-centric CRO, because again, the point of RevOps or GTM Ops is to ensure there's no silos, that there's proactivity between these four teams: marketing, sales, product, customer success, or more. So it could, by the way, it could report to the CFO also, who has obviously a revenue and profit centricity. In the end, I would tend to say yes, CEO would be the most kind of adequate place for RevOps as GTM Ops.
You mentioned product there for a moment, and product doesn't get enough love, but I almost feel like they should be their own operational unit within the same wheel, because obviously their goal is to improve the product service of the business, whatever that may be. And they don't operate in a vacuum, or at least they shouldn't be operating in a vacuum. And so
Yep.
I think oftentimes RevOps doesn't get involved with the product team. And I think it's good for them to have a level of autonomy, but I feel like there should be a stronger relationship there.
Oh, totally. I agree. And at Type, we are very close, and product and commercial obviously are very close in terms. It could be things like relationship between bugs and customer satisfaction, or bugs and actually revenue. We can allocate revenue to different types of bugs, for example. So that's the level that needs to happen, and the product roadmap to be integrated with the commercial or sales or marketing roadmap, which is what we do too, and RevOps. So we have a plan on a page, for example, where you have a line for RevOps, or version of RevOps, if you want, RevOps, and then you have a line for product and a line for all the marketing stuff. So I'm talking about the marketing plan here. And it has to be aligned, obviously. Product features, so you either fix your product or you innovate, you have new features. Absolutely, it has to be part of that RevOps/GTM, or otherwise it's not going to work for sure. And the customer insights coming into marketing, coming into product, the product insights from product usage. So we have product analytics, which are part of RevOps, of revenue metrics. And as you can use HubSpot for that, obviously. Whether you have a software which is cloud or non-cloud, obviously, if you self-managed kind of software, you're not going to have the same level of data analytics as the cloud, as the full SaaS version. But it is critical to use all these metrics from product, whether you use BigQuery or AI tools or LLM, to analyze and to report on these, but that's absolutely critical for sure. Yeah.
With all of that foundation in mind, I know that we have the 8 pillars of the go-to-market system, and I really want to dedicate some time to breaking these down, because go-to-market ops is a function of RevOps in the same way that sales and marketing and CS ops are also a function of both of those two. But go ahead and break down these 8 pillars of the GTM system.
Yeah, and I'm not an expert of GTM, like GTM partners, so that's all my own interpretation, obviously. But yeah, as they say, it's an operating system, and I would, as it shows, you have the market in green. Basically, you have a couple of external, and I would probably put brand and demand. So the first 3 lines, I would say the closest to marketing, right? If I simplify a bit. So everything around segmentation and targeting and cohorts and the total, the TAM, the total addressable market, or the SAM, the SOM, the serviceable market. There's different terms there. Obviously, everything around competition, lead scoring, market research, market share, analyzing your go-to-market streams, types, if you want, looking at the investment, the cost versus return of whether you do, for example, self-serve versus sales-led growth. So again, depending on the GTM motion. So everything which is in green here is the start for me. That's where you start, right? You take a customer-centric, a market-centric view. And based on that, your brand and demand, your marketing, whether it's top funnel, mid funnel, usually that's where marketing operates. Messaging, positioning, value proposition, differentiation, and again, targeting, retargeting, how you engage, the channels you use, the content assets that you use. So that's basically, for me, the way, and hopefully I'm not completely opposite of what GTM partners would say, but that's really super important to inform the rest of the wheel. So it is, in a way, the flywheel for HubSpot is the attract, right? I know it's not exactly the same, but attracting the top funnel and engaging also is really what we're talking about here. Then you look at pipeline velocity, which is for me the closest to sales in a way. So you're building a foundation which is measured, obviously, predictable, scalable, hopefully, where you have everything which is financial ops, also forecasting, and you have obviously all the commercial stuff, commercial processes, the reporting, the playbooks, that you have between marketing and sales, because velocity is, and linked to that, you have the cost efficiency, the GTM efficiency, I would say, the velocity of the deals, because we're not looking at MQLs and SQLs anymore. We're looking at deals now. We're looking at ARR. We're looking at pipeline created or qualified. Just stop me if you have any questions, by the way. Customer time to value, TTV, or lifetime value, you could say also, again, here, and also expansion. So the two in red, kind of pink, are more to do with customer success and also customer support, because time to value is also about how fast can you go from beta, from POC to production. And of course, to get usage and to get the value, whether it's speed, cost, revenue growth, monetization, these two are critical. So now you're going more into, after the attract, engage, convert, you're getting more into the expansion side, as it says. So that is using all the insights, the data and learnings from the previous green and yellow parts of that wheel, if you want. So again, it's a wheel, so it goes back at some points. You have also to look at the previous hypothesis in terms of cohort, segmentation, engagement, content, messaging. So that's the whole point. So using customer insights. And then you have revenue operations, which we've talked about that already, is a lot about ensuring we have the foundation in place on processes, on data, on integrating tools, on reporting, so the famous single source of truth, on making sure everything is unified. So that is obviously a very essential role to play. So it's not that RevOps is coming at the end and, hey, give me what you've got, guys. No, RevOps, like leadership, so the two kind of black-gray areas here, leadership being the sponsorship, as I mentioned before, but also where you report to, making sure that you get resources, that you get also integration. The leaders, whether it's C-level or not, are responsible to make sure also that the wheel is turning and turning faster. So that's the way I interpret that GTM ops wheel, which again, analogy with the flywheel from HubSpot and RevOps here. To an extent, the RevOps people who will listen to me will say, we're not just one little piece of that cake or the wheel. No, it's not, because it's one of the, I think it's 8 different boxes. No, RevOps is involved pretty much, or should be involved in pretty much everything, like the leadership.
It's a really interesting call out, because the whole purpose of this podcast is to help HubSpot admin deliver HubSpot more effectively. And when you really lean into the strategic side of the conversation and how we as admin think about our roles, revenue operations is one of the many things that we need to be taking into account. But revenue operations in and of itself includes conversations around customer expansion, time to value for customer, right? And all of that is from getting better data in your CRM, which is really where it starts. Because if you don't have quality data, then how do you make data-driven decisions?
Totally. And in my experience of the last 2 or 3 companies, some of them used Salesforce, but most HubSpot, the HubSpot admin is usually in marketing, or I should be careful there. It could be sales ops, it could be MarOps, let's say. It depends on the context and the type of company, etc., and maturity. But it is HubSpot admin is central. It's CRM, it's source of truth. It should be in RevOps or working for the CRO, and not be in a corner somewhere, because it's a key role to the way you set up your properties and workflows, and not just to set up, but and use AI. And the new AI, there's an AI agents marketplace, and it's evolving, obviously. It's agent ops. So CRM is becoming basically a set of agents. It's becoming a fundamental GTM platform. Obviously, HubSpot has different modules, is already set up that way, in a way, or going that way. And the admin is a bit pejorative. I think the role of the admin is much more than admin. Right? It's, as you say, I think strategy and making sure that all these dots, these pieces of the wheel are connected.
To the point of developing strategic thought processes as an admin, as a business professional, what are some of the ways, of course, you deliver keynotes on the topic, but what are some ways that and resources that you recommend that individuals really lean into to master go-to-market ops, RevOps, and their strategic thinking?
I've been part of different communities, and I'm very much linked with the Alliance, which is a set. I was there. They had basically, it was a summit in London where they had a room for each discipline. They had product marketing, RevOps, they had a CRO one, they had a CMO, etc. That was amazing to see. I'd never seen that before. I was expecting a small kind of event, but yeah, there were quite a few hundreds people there. And it was in a hotel, right? Intercontinental. And seeing that, every room is like a silo, right? It's a bit of a shame, but the Alliance, the Product Marketing Alliance, the RevOps Alliance, Revenue Marketing Alliance, I should say, has a great program of events, of knowledge, newsletters, Slack, of courses, where you can build. I don't think there's a GTM Ops. I told them, actually, there's no GTM Ops kind of stream yet, but I'm sure there will be one next year. It is a great example of where you can, part of a community, learn from each other, do specific certifications, etc. And there are other networks linked with RevOps in general. I must say, most of my learnings come from LinkedIn, just following all these gurus, and maybe later we can share them on LinkedIn, like GTM Partners, Winning by Design. They're well known, right? So there is also in Europe, in the US, you have also quite a lot, but in Europe, there's one which has a revenue architecture kind of playbook and course. We can share it after. But yeah, I think there are probably half a dozen experts in what we're talking about today that deliver courses that you can follow online, or there are all kinds of events in big cities also that you can go to. But I would say, yes, choosing a playbook that is relevant for your company, following that course online is, for me, the way to go.
And again, you've given keynotes on the topic. You're very experienced when it comes to obviously marketing ops, being the CMO, but of course you have expertise here with understanding go-to-market ops and RevOps. If you had a junior employee that walked into your office and they said, I really want to be a CMO one day, what steps should I take now to put myself on that path? What advice would you give them?
I don't know if it's a good idea to be a CMO one day, to be honest.
Maybe that is the advice.
Yeah, maybe that's the advice. Because to be honest, in a way, I don't think CMOs will exist for many years. The way it's going, even strategy, marketing planning now can be done or augmented by AI. So I always say the leader has to find ways to replace himself or herself by their team, or basically not be needed anymore. If everything is running as it should, then you're not needed anymore. You can move on. So for me, in my career, it would be looking at becoming a CRO, becoming or chief growth market, which is where I prefer to play as opposed to lead one discipline, one silo. I think we all have, whether you're junior or senior, the earlier, so the question was, what kind of advice? The earlier you're involved with each of the pieces of, each of the wheel, if you want, of GTM Partners, the better it will be. So myself, I am not touching every single one of them. So you have the famous debate about being a generalist or being a specialist and T profiles. I probably cover about five or so of these areas. And ideally, I need to get more involved in 2 or 3 of the others. So the earlier you do that, and remember, I started my career 30 years ago, so the internet was about starting. It's not an excuse, but the younger people, let's say, have already that kind of digital native and speed of absorption. And for me, I focus more on the people side. But the people, the junior people, if you want, the skills is not the difficulty, it's the attitude, the mindset, the curiosity to look at each of these areas, to work with these people, to say, hey, how can I help you, dear reps? How can I help you, dear customer success? Help them on a specific project. I have somebody in the team. She's not very junior, but she's a data scientist. She's super important, LLM specialist and all that stuff. She helps everyone, product analytics, engineering, and that's amazing what she can do. So if you have that skill, specific skill, you can apply it across the company, and then you will become one day CMO because you looked at the market side already, or another job title in 5 or 10 years. I think job titles will be quite different for a lot of people.
I love that. And the final question that I'll have for you on this episode, which I know we've discussed at length, but in simple terms, is go-to-market ops versus RevOps just a matter of semantics?
I would say yes and no. Depending on the model that is in place in your company versus the benchmarks that I've just shown you, I would say these two are pretty spot on. I would tend to say, if you had to bet one of the two, aim for GTM Ops, which for me is wider, is more proactive, is crossing more than the internal side, is market focused, is giving you, in terms of your career, a wider field to play and evolve than just RevOps, which is already an old-fashioned term compared to GTM Ops. And I'm sure GTM Ops will be replaced by something else, whether it's AI Ops or you name it, in a couple of years. But again, it's just a term. What you need to understand is your skills and your gaps, and especially always have that curiosity to learn from other disciplines and experiment and collaborate so that the whole company benefits, whether it's RevOps in your company or GTM or Chief GTM, it doesn't matter. As far as you've got the right attitude, you will grow, you will hopefully learn and benefit.
That's fantastic advice. And Phil, thank you so much for joining us on the episode of the Sprocket Pod today. How can people best connect you, follow you, or even attend your keynotes?
Oh, yeah, sure. LinkedIn is probably the best option. Phil Ruttens. You can contact me also by email, but I think LinkedIn is my favorite. Thanks for that. And thanks for inviting me, by the way. Really interesting chat with you and really hot topic. And definitely anytime anybody who asks questions, I'm always happy to guide. I don't pretend to know everything. I'm learning too, but yeah, I'm giving you a few good tips there.
It's an interesting time for all of us to be having these conversations because in many ways we're writing history as we speak. We're formulating our opinions, we're shaping what AI is going to look like and how it's going to impact the industries. And Phil, I appreciate you coming on because it's experts like yourself that help to really drive these conversations. So thank you for joining us today.
No, you're welcome. It's true. And it keeps somebody like me challenged every day, to be honest. Even after 30 years, I just realized, whoa, what's happening? The speed of change is just mind-blowing, the last few months especially.
It truly is. Phil, thank you so much to everyone for listening. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Sprocket Pod podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode with your co-hosts, Cameron Collins and Mark Lerner. Be sure to catch us live every week on LinkedIn, and don't forget to subscribe to our episodes on YouTube and Spotify. If you found this episode valuable, please leave a review and share it with others looking to get more from HubSpot. Until next time, keep driving success with your CRM, and as always, Sprocket on.